So thank you. I know that you guys most likely know who I am. My name is Ida. Hey, there's Jesse. Hi, Jesse. Good to
Hi.
have you.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. And what a surprise. It's nice to see you here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Anna shared with me that you were having this, so it's like I gotta
Awesome.
jump on.
Yeah. So I was sharing with Matt, Carrie, and Kelly. If you don't have it nearby, go get yourself some water. Stay hydrated through the next hour that we'll be together. And then if you do have essential oils in your house, go ahead and grab any or your favorites, because I want you to start to visualize really like the tiny little bottle as something that is medicine. And also, if you have some of the ones that we talk about, then you can begin to associate like this is medicine for this, right?
Will do.
Awesome. Yay, it's good to see your face.
Just cooking some dinner.
You go ahead and do you, girl. All right. And so let me go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, we'll get started. Now, I want to thank you all so much for coming. Actually, before we dive in, I'd love to hear if there's like a particular intention or like a question that you're pondering on, or perhaps what you're seeking to receive. Like, what are you willing or ready to walk away with from this workshop? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself and share if you feel comfortable, but no pressure.
I want to know which oils I should buy because I've only got lemongrass and peppermint, and I want to get a load of more. But I want to know like what's gonna be good for me. So
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
I have a few favorites that I use over and over. And so I'm looking to expand the repertoire and learn, yes, kind of the same what maybe of the more unique oils I can implement in my day-to-day use.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
I think I'm here just to expand my knowledge with essential oils, and also what essential oils you would recommend for like skincare products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. That's a great question. Thanks, Kelly.
I wanted to know what's good for Pitta dosha.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Is that your most prominent dosha?
Yeah.
You and me, girl. A day in the house of fire. Sometimes it works for us. Sometimes it's our worst enemy. Like this whole thing with naps. I'm like, I don't like people that take naps. You know, like I'm a go-getter. I can't handle you taking a nap in the middle of the day. Like in my mind, my impulsive mind will be like, what a waste of time. But then my intellect, my booty is like, when you're tired, you can take a nap, you know? And like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But like my nature is pretty impulsive and judgmental. It's like, it's incredible. And when we don't find ourselves in a state of balance, like how this nature, if it's enhanced or even overly exploited, how can be a complete weapon to our lives. And so thank you so much for sharing your intentions. And I hope that we can make this a little bit of dynamic workshop so that we can perhaps explore what are these qualities and are they resonating with me. And if I do not know what my predominantly dosha is, what is my prakriti, like what is my nature, my actual constitution, as is defined by Ayurveda from the moment of birth. And so we'll dive a little bit into that. But to give you a little bit of an introduction, Ayurveda is something that I came across at a very young age without knowing that that was Ayurveda. Like my grandparents had the most deep connection to nature to the point that they would grow their own things. They would talk to them. They would sing to them. You know, they would even, they from a very young age, my grandparents encouraged me to begin to know plants and their personality. And that was something that I completely took for granted when I was a child. I was just like, what are you talking about personality? These plants barely move. Like, what are you talking about? But like the reality is that these qualities, every single plant, every single type of food has different qualities, and therefore that can be expressed or understood as a personality. Some plants are going to be stimulating, that's their personality. Their personality is to be hyped. Some plants are actually grounding and soothing, and that's actually a personality. And so I want us to actually start to think about this as everything that Mother Nature gives us has a particular personality, has a divine energy that will directly affect me if I'm absorbing it through my senses, whether that is hearing it, breathing it, seeing it, tasting it, etc. Right? And so when I came across Ayurveda under the name of Ayurveda, I was in my first yoga teacher training about six and a half years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And I was fascinated by hearing the core beliefs of Ayurveda. I was just like, wow, this is like so simple, yet so complex. It's really easy to understand, but a little bit difficult to apply. Because who do I have to keep me accountable first? And who do I have to actually go to ask questions to understand, am I out of balance? Or is this just actually my nature? And I've been so out of balance for so long that I began to actually identify myself as this kind of person. Like, I think my symptoms are who I am versus I am as pure spirit, pure consciousness that begins to be affected and influenced by nature and our environment. And so I hope really, and I pray that the information that I share, even when it's simple and pretty basic, can be something that inspires you perhaps to move more or deepen your ability to live a life that it's natural and, you know, a little bit less risky, because you're actually extracting something that it's pure, it's natural, and you're bringing that from nature and taking it directly into your body. And so I'll share my screen from here on. And if any questions come up, since I won't be able to see you guys, go ahead and unmute yourself or type it in the chat. If you look down, I know by now probably we're all masters at Zooms, but there's a little bit of a box that says reactions, and you can interact with me or even call me out. Right. Let's get started. So the presentation itself will be quite short, actually, unless we dive into questions and we kind of sort of peel deeper layers into Ayurveda. And then I'll use the last portion of our time together just to answer any questions or perhaps any takeaways, and hopefully to expand my services to you in the sense of free Ayurveda consultations, just to ensure that you understand what is your actual constitution, like what is your actual dosha or most prominent dosha. And so moving on from here, you know, as we dive deeper into the science of Ayurveda and as we begin to unravel the simple teachings of Ayurveda, we're going to begin to understand that the external environment affects us deeply, right? And so the science of life, which is what Ayurveda is often referred to, has gifted us with seasonal routines of eating, self-care, and beyond that, so that each and every one of us, really, like the individual, can gracefully dance in and out of their state of balance. And something that I really want to emphasize, and we'll kind of mention this throughout the workshop, is, but really, balance is not something that we get to and we stay. Balance is a constant dynamic state of finding what I need and perhaps choosing that versus what I want in the moment. And so we'll begin to explore during the seasonal changes, what is it actually creating in my body, physically, physiologically, and also mentally, so psychologically, and how can I reach for the plant medicine that I actually need in that moment of time? And so I want to start first by explaining what essential oils are. And really, essential oils are extracted, volatile, aromatic compounds that we find in leaves, in flowers, in barks, in stems, roots, resins, and the peel of citrus fruits. And so because they're volatile, meaning that they evaporate quickly, if I open a little bottle, even without bringing it closer to my actual face, I will smell it immediately. That's often if you have a little cabinet with your oils, like I do in my bathroom, without even opening the cabinet, I can also smell them. And even my cat can smell them. He's like actually very curious about that cabinet, but there's some oils there that are toxic from him. So it's pretty high up and it's pretty closed every time. But volatile means, again, that they evaporate quickly. And so again, if I open a bottle and bring it close to my nose, I will breathe it in. It'll be in my lungs and in my bloodstream within minutes. And therefore it will actually travel through my entire body, and it will be in every single organ within 20 minutes. So everything that I breathe in whether it is directly breathing it in or diffusing it in my environment, will literally be in every single organ of your body within 20 minutes. And so when we think about yoga and yogic perspective, everything that we absorb through our senses deeply affects us and influences the way that we feel. It influences the way that we see life, and it colors our consciousness. And therefore, it will begin to define and create a lens in which we see life through. And so to make that even simpler, everything that we absorb through our senses, everything that I breathe in, everything that I eat, everything that I see, everything that I hear, literally becomes me. It affects my thoughts. It will affect my digestion. It will affect every single function of my internal systems and organs. And so because of this, I personally aim to find the purest, grade A therapeutic oils. And this is why I'll be specific about the doTERRA brand in this workshop. Not that other brands are not incredible. I found that other brands are incredible and they're also equally as pure. But I personally have the most experience with this brand, and this is what I'll be talking about. And of course, if you have any questions or if you have suggestions of other brands, please feel free to share with the group. And so when we think about essential oils, there are 3 ways to use this plant medicine. And this is particularly, again, to this grade A therapeutic essential oils that are going through extensive research, extensive process of distillation, and also extensive testing to ensure its purity, its potency, and that they're not actually diluted with synthetic agents. And so we can use them aromatically. And like I said before, if we breathe them in, they will go into our bloodstream. They will be in every single organ of my body within 20 minutes. If I apply them topically, the same thing applies, but even faster. Because the thing with topically is that our skin is our biggest organ according to Ayurveda and yogic principles and just basic science and biology. Our skin is our biggest organ. So anything that I apply in my skin, my body will feed from, it will go into my bloodstream, and it will be in my body within actual 10 minutes. So when I apply physically, my body will feed from that even faster. And then particularly with this doTERRA essential oil, you can take them internally. And that for me was actually one of the highest, because blends like Digest Zen that has a powerful combination of herbs like cumin, fennel, and coriander, which are incredible to aid digestion, you can actually take them internally and soothe any type of bloating, gas, diarrhea, nausea, and things like that that are related to your digestive system. And they're so potent that 1 drop of that equals to 28 cups of actual herbal tea. And so if we go a little bit deeper into what Ayurveda is so that we can start to understand how can I start to use these oils as my own medicine. Now, Ayurveda is known as yoga's sister science, and it's a 5,000-year-old system of natural healing that it's rooted in the culture of India. And really more than a mere system of treating illness, Ayurveda really is guiding us towards a vibrant physical and mental health, but also our connection to our spiritual nature. Now, yoga says that we are pure spirit and that we're made of these layers that form the self, right? Maybe some of you are familiar with the koshas. And so we have the physical body that is the outermost layer of the self. And we have layers that go inward that form who I actually am. And so Ayurveda, and the beauty about Eastern medicine versus Western medicine, that it's often just symptom-based and comes with side effects. Ayurveda and Eastern holistic modalities are trying to really tackle the whole entity, so the whole being, not only my physical body, but also what is my mind experiencing? What are the deeper tissues in my body experiencing? What is my soul and my senses experiencing? And if all of that is balanced, then I can actually experience health. And so it really provides us with guidelines on ideal daily and seasonal routine, diet, behavior, and proper use of our senses. Really, and just like I said earlier, Ayurveda reminds us that balance is not something that we get there and we stay forever. It's something that we have to constantly choose to work to attain. And it's a dynamic state of integration that moves as a whole, body, mind, spirit. And hopefully what I'm trying to create here with this movement of sacred movement is that once we align and really connect all the layers of our being, mind, body, and spirit, then we can start to actually expand and think of the macrocosm, our environment, our planet. And so Ayurveda is a science really that helps us understand ourselves so that we can better connect with others and the world around us. It helps us experience health so that we can then focus on asking ourselves deep and beyond just superficial questions like, what is my actual purpose? What am I here to do? And when we experience health, when my mind is clear, when I'm not worried about treating a specific symptoms that I'm experiencing in my body, when my body and all of the systems are functioning properly, then I can actually go out there in the world and reach my fullest potential, right? When I am healthy, body, mind, and spirit, then I can actually do things in the world. I'm actually lit up and I can experience my full power. And so really Ayurveda is, if we begin to break down what the outer universe is constricted of and what is created from, Ayurveda helps us understand that the material world is made of matter, which is formed by these 5 elements. And that's what Ayurveda tries to work with in order to understand what balance is for me, for you, and you. And how can I go there from time to time based on the seasons and based on also the seasons that I experience internally. And I like to think of emotions and feelings as well as symptoms as seasons that the physical body, so this whole environment and the ecosystem of my body is actually moving through. And so we'll dive a little bit deeper into these elements, which a combination of these elements is what actually begins to form the doshas, what Ayurveda defines as the doshas. And so from the perspective of Ayurveda, both man and nature are pervaded by 3 universal, holistic, fundamental forces, or the doshas. And then here we have Vata dosha, Kapha, and Pitta dosha. And this is just a little bit of a run through because I know that all of you, if not most of you, are pretty familiar with this information. But the Vata dosha is a combination of the element of space and air. And so qualities that can be attributed to Vata dosha, or things that we can see in the outer world or in our inner environment, and we can state, hey, this is actually a Vata dosha symptom, or this is a sign that my Vata is high or too low. Some of these qualities, or as Ayurveda defines them as gunas, is airy, dry, cold, rough, mobile, fast, pretty quick. So when we think of Kapha dosha, it's a combination of the elements of earth and water. And some of the characteristics and qualities that we can identify for Kapha is cool. So it's not necessarily freezing cold. It drops a few degrees lower. I mean, a few degrees higher, I guess. And it is a little bit cool still, heavy. It can be wet. It can be stable in the sense of actually a really strong foundation, or it can be very stagnant as well. And when we jump down into Pitta dosha, it's a combination of fire and water. So technically it's liquid fire. It can be hot, oily, smooth, sharp, and intense. Now, as we dive a little bit deeper, I want you to really take away from this workshop and something that you can hold on to as a mantra for your entire life from here on, if you don't have it already, is that Ayurveda has a basic rule of understanding balance, and is that like increases like and opposites create balance. And this might be silly, but to make it really simplistic, because Ayurveda is like that, it's simple as like pre-K grade. If I am cold and I drink a cold beverage, then I'm going to get even colder. I might even start to shiver. But if I am cold and sip on a cup of tea, then I will most likely move towards a state of balance. And so it is easy like that, right? With Ayurveda, we begin to understand these gunas, or the qualities, and then each element has, and also because we understand these gunas and the qualities that each have, we can understand the qualities of each dosha and what they're actually made of. From there, we can begin to understand when they go out of balance. What are the signs when a dosha is out of balance? And how can I invite plant medicine to actually restore my health? And so there's something that it was really beautiful when I was doing my training in Ayurveda, is that the way Ayurveda defines health, and this is going a little bit deeper into what I was sharing earlier, is this beautiful mantra, this beautiful Sanskrit verse that says, Sama dosha, Sama agnisha, Sama dhatu, malakriya, prasana atma indriya manaha, and swasta iti avidiyate. And so what this means is Sama dosha, and this is not the dosha that we eat. It is when the organizing energies of the body are balanced. And what does this mean? That every single system in my body is balanced. My respiratory system, my digestive system, my nervous system is balanced. If I'm experiencing that, then the system of my body, the ecosystem of my body is actually working properly, right? Going deeper into the digestive ability, because Ayurveda really tackles our digestive fire and our digestive system. Sama Agnisha, Agni being the word for digestive fire, which is the force that is in rule of our digestive power. When our digestive abilities are balanced, that is actual health. And what does this mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm eating and pooping, eating and peeing, and that's normal. We can actually go a little bit deeper into what our excretion should look like. And if that is working properly, if that's carrying particular and specific qualities, then I can say the digestive abilities of my body are actually balanced. If I'm not retaining toxins, or what Ayurveda says as ama. Now, samadhatu, when the tissues are balanced. And so remember when I said that if we breathe it in, it goes into our system, and in every single organ within 20 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on whether we breathe it in or we apply it deeply in our skin. And so the deeper tissues of our body and our organs, if they are balanced, that also adds to the ability for us to experience health. If we go to Malakriya, when we're excreting our waste properly, and we have 3, and I know that 2 are common, but anybody can guess the third one? You can just unmute yourself and say. No pressure if you don't. And so we have pooping, we have urinating, and we have sweat. If we're not doing those 3 properly, naturally, and every single day, or in a more realistic context, a pretty balanced way where I'm sweating a few times a week, then actually my body is working properly, right? And the thing, can we talk about poop a little bit? All right. We all poop. This is kind of natural. Okay. So Ayurveda defines the perfect poop, because there's like a thing. It's a thing, the perfect poop. The perfect poop should be just about the consistency of a really ripe banana. And of course, the length and the size can vary depending on the body. But if our poop is that kind of consistency, that kind of shape, and it floats, that means my digestive abilities are balanced, my deeper tissues are balanced, and my waste is actually excreting all the ama, all the toxins that I may be inviting into my body. And inviting in a conscious and unconscious way, because if I'm correct, most of us are in New York City, if not in big cities, we can experience an insane amount of intake of toxins just by being in a place. It doesn't mean that I'm buying all organic and eating the healthiest food and I'm still experiencing issues. Our environment deeply affects us. What we invite through our senses deeply affects us. And so if we're not digesting all of our toxins, and that includes our thoughts, toxic thoughts, beliefs, limiting beliefs and behaviors, if we're not digesting and perhaps even actually taking time and space to unravel all of that comes, then we're not really releasing and eliminating properly. And that's when Ayurveda really tackles the whole of the being. We're not just thinking about food, we're thinking about our thoughts and everything that we invite through our senses. And so if we can get to that almost ripe banana poop and it floats, that has been my goal for a few months. I'm still working on it. Let me know how it goes for you in a few months. And then this is something that I really absolutely adore about the way that Ayurveda defines health, and it's prasana atma indriya manaha. When my soul, when my senses and my mind are blissful. So this really defines that Ayurveda is not only taking care of the physical body. We're really trying to satisfy the soul, and then satisfy the mind, and then also satisfy the senses. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later on. We'll come back to this particular mantra. Now, when all of that is working properly, and that is perfect health. That is what Ayurveda defines as perfect health. Is there any questions or reflections or like any aha moments, like, duh, this makes total sense? Or I didn't think about that in that way. Yeah. Awesome. And so a little bit more here. You know, the word health in Ayurveda is translated into swasta. Swasta literally translates into being situated in myself. my true self, beyond the roles that I play in my life, beyond the ever-changing body and mind, beyond the senses and the limitations of my own perception. Now, from time to time, we'll fall out of our states of balance, right? We'll fall out of our states of health. It's natural. That's what the world is made of. But as we make a choice in our lives based on our past conditioning, rather than rising above my likes and dislikes, or even my attachments and my aversions, then that happens even more frequently. And so an example is that just the other day, after eating extremely clean and Ayurvedically, and Matt knows this, I went for a feast at Little Frankie's in the Lower East Side. I sure had pasta, bruschetta, portobello mushrooms, eggplant, fried zucchini, marinara, like a whole bunch of stuff that it's like, oh my God, so delicious. Like anybody would look at that and be like, that's an excellent feast. But I had that at 9:30 p.m. after eating everything that I really need for what I was feeling for almost 3 months. And it resulted in 8 hours of me being glued to the toilet. I was literally so food poisoned and sick that I couldn't even move. And I was supposed to teach an intro to essential oils and Ayurveda. And I ended up canceling because I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't even type without getting nauseous again. And it was terrible. We tend to go for that third bowl of ice cream, even when our gut is saying, yo, like you're gonna feel extremely sick later on. Or in my personal experience, because I used to party like it was a full-time job. Back then, a couple of years ago, I would go for that party, even when I had to wake up and teach an asana class at 10 in the morning at Stanton, just because my conditioning, my impulsive mind was saying, you want to go get it. Like, it's okay. You can just sleep a couple hours, take a quick nap. That's my kind of nap, the disco nap. That's the only one that I go for. And so, but, you know, part of me would say, yo, like you have to teach a class and you're actually a yoga teacher. What are you actually stepping forth as an example to your students? But time to time, we go for what we want. We avoid what we need. And that's when we often fall more frequently out of our state of balance. And so really in this workshop, if there's something that I really want you to take away with you, it's how can we understand the doshas and understand who am I and what is the dosha that is most predominantly in me, if I'm not completely sure. And what is my prakriti? What is my constitution? Because again, we might have experienced such symptoms or such personalities for so long that we begin to identify, oh, that's me, right? That's me. Because I've been conditioned and I've been that person for so long that I think that that's my balance, that's my personality, that's my constitution. And so can I understand perhaps what I need every day, every couple weeks, every month, every season, and what can I give my body and mind, as well as my senses, to actually experience health and balance? And so let's dive a little bit deeper into the doshas. And so starting with Vata dosha, some of the gunas or the qualities that we can experience in Vata is airy, dry, cold, mobile, subtle. If we think about air, we kind of sort of feel it, but we can't really see it, right? So it's quite subtle. And Vata dosha is particularly the one that goes out of balance the most, especially as we move from our adulthood and into old age. The Vata types, when we think of the individual itself, can be very thin and lanky builds. They're the creatives and the spontaneous of the crew of friends. They're mentally and physically active. They can be quite fast, actually. So all of a sudden, they're moving through a train of thought that they just come up with. They come up with a whole composition of music in just a couple minutes. They can run cold, particularly hands and feet. They tend to run cold. And these people, they love to travel. They love to meet people. So they're actually the life of the party in a group, right? So anyone experiencing these doshas or these qualities and these kind of sort of like characteristics to the individual and perhaps saying like, that sounds kind of like me, or that's definitely not me, because this is definitely not me. When we think of Vata dosha imbalanced, physical qualities can be dry, cracking skin joints. We can experience dry hair and nails. We can experience a lot of gas and a lot of bloating and even constipation. If that gas and bloating is consistent, it becomes chronic. It can actually lead to constipation and poor elimination. And some of the mental, emotional, so therefore psychological qualities is that we can experience insomnia, inability of focus. So remembering that the Vata type thinks very fast, and because of that, it's easy for them to lose focus. And if Vata dosha is extremely aggravated, so enhanced, they can actually find that inability to focus, that ability to feel stable. They also can experience high anxiety, isolation, and even lack of sleep for that matter. And so when we think of Vata balancing oils or herbs, foods, and plants, these are some of my top favorites and the ones that we often have in a medicine cabinet, because I often think of my spices as medicine cabinet. And so we think of cinnamon, ginger, chamomile. We think of copaiba, which is a resin from a tree. It's like this beautiful wax that it's grounding. We think of black pepper, cardamom, clove, lavender, laurel leaf. We have magnolia, frankincense, and hoe wood. And now, some of the qualities that these have in common is that they're either roots, stems, or the trunks of trees. So when we think of this, all of this is extracted from deep in the forest, right? And so let's just start to think that what Vata is balanced with is whatever it grows and thrives during spring. Anything that is Kapha will begin to balance Vata. And so for the doTERRA blends, two of my favorite is Balance and Anchor. These two are incredibly grounding, calming, and heavily oily oils. They come from the wax and the resin of trees, so they're even heavier than that, say, cardamom. And so the blends that I have here, Balance and Anchor, these are not only grounding and heavy, but they're also warming. They carry cinnamon and ginger. Because Vata can be cold, to bring back into balance, we need the opposite. And so when we think of hot, heating spices, this can begin to experience a little bit more comfort for a Vata person, or even be an incredible medicine to treat some of these symptoms that we had here, like insomnia, inability to focus, anxiety, and isolation. And so moving forward into Kapha dosha. And so we started with Vata. Actually, let me go back. Seeing these qualities of Vata, we think right here, what kind of season comes to mind? From the four seasons. Winter, yeah. And so actually fall and winter are Vata season. Just like during the day, there's Vata times, right? Vata time is that period of the night right before the sunrise. It's very airy, it's very mobile. You know that at that time between 3 and 5 a.m., there's a lot of wind, right? And all of a sudden after that, the wind stops and everything becomes a little bit more stagnant, more stable, more quiet. And so Vata times, just like those times early in the morning, and Vata season is like that winter and fall. And so thinking of that, know that what balances Vata is what comes next. Nature is perfectly designed. Like when we try to replicate nature is the only time that we actually become smart. Like there's not another more higher intelligence than the intelligence of nature out there. Because Vata and fall and winter can be so dry, nature gives you what you need in the next season. And so moving forward into Kapha, now we know that these qualities like cool, heavy, wet, moist, dull, slow, and stable, we can experience them during springtime or during Kapha times. Have you ever woken up between like 7 and 11 a.m.? Do you feel heavier than if you wake up at 6 a.m.? And that's because the energy of that day, and even it can be very subtle, the energy of that time and the energy of this period of time, particularly during springtime, if we wake up during that time, we can experience even more heaviness. And that's when Ayurveda actually recommends, hey, rise before the sun and try to avoid that heaviness that will actually enhance and aggravate Kapha. And so when we think of Kapha types, so thinking of the individual, of the person, we think of strong and full frame. We feel that these people, or we have experienced them as people and beings that are very compassionate and nourishing. They're very loyal, they're very stable, they're very loving. I think of Shama every time I think of a Kapha person. She's like the embodiment of Kapha. These people are oftentimes people that experience a lot of difficulty in learning something new. But once they learn it, once they understood that equation or that topic, it stays learned forever. So it's actually engraved in their system. And these people thrive from routine and consistency. Something that Kapha people hate is actually moving or changing a routine drastically. And so when we think of Kapha dosha imbalances, we think of the physical qualities as we can experience cold and cough. We can experience a lot of congestion. We may experience even enhanced allergies. As we know, spring season is the time for heavier allergies. And that's also known as the cold and flu season. We can definitely experience that this year, right? We can experience poor digestion. It's easy to gain weight. And it's actually very difficult to lose weight because we can experience a lot of water retention. And I say we because I am primarily Pitta, but I have a little Kapha in me. And so when we think of mental and emotional quality, so psychologically, we can experience a lot of lethargy, a lot of lack of motivation because we're stagnant, because we feel that kind of heaviness. We don't really want to get up and do anything. It's easy to become attached to things, and it's easy to get irritated if something changes or if we lose something, right? We have that sense of possessiveness. It can actually even emanate or broaden into our relationships. We feel stubborn because we don't like change, and I'm set in my ways. That's the kind of person that said that that's the way that I am, and period. And if Kapha is very enhanced, and not only physically, but psychologically, we can experience depression. And so the mood can drop, and we can experience that heaviness again in the mind. And so when we think of Kapha balancing oils, some are repeated from the previous one, but we're going into the cinnamon bark, so a little bit deeper into the cinnamon. This has a few different qualities than just the plain cinnamon product. And so from there, we see that they still have the common exchange of Vata by a few of these being warming, and possibly a little bit more warming than the previous one. And it's because the springtime is a period of transition, right? Spring is a period of transition from being freezing cold into extreme heat. The fall is the transition between extreme heat into extreme cold. So these periods of transition are great for us to enhance our self-care, because that's when the temperatures again fluctuate a lot. Therefore, our own inner being will fluctuate a lot. And we want to start to actually incorporate what the next season is about. That's how Ayurveda helps us transition. And so the springtime, we invite a little bit more of a heating pinch. So we got the cayenne here, we got the clove. Ginger, you're going to see in all three because ginger is just fucking universal. But moving beyond this, we have cassia, which is very similar to cinnamon bark. We also have citruses, right? Citruses are very uplifting. When we breathe in lemon or orange, or even wild orange for that matter, they can elevate our mood. And it's psychologically proven that citrus can actually really make us feel uplifted. And so we have lemon, bergamot being actually one of the most potent, and wild orange. We have peppermint and eucalyptus for their cooling effects. So we give ourselves a little bit of heat and a little bit of cold. And this is because spring is a period of transition. So there'll be days that it's a little bit colder. There'll be days that it's looking a little bit more like summer. And so we fluctuate, right? And this is when I start to think, okay, if the days are a little bit too hot, then I'll go for peppermint and eucalyptus in that period of transition. If the environment or I'm experiencing a little bit too much cold or dryness, then I'll go for cinnamon bark or cassia, clove, ginger, cayenne. And so we start to identify, okay, in these periods of transition, what can I give myself based on what I need, what I feel, and what can I give myself to find balance? And then we have rosemary, oregano, marjoram, and geranium. These are literally nature's antibiotics and stimulants. And so when we have rosemary and oregano that are known for killing bacteria, and of course the FDA wouldn't allow me to say this to you, but I personally have experienced that when I have a virus, I'll take a drop of oregano and the symptoms are gone in almost a day or two. And the reality is that oregano is one of the most heating herbs and spices. It's actually more heating than actual cayenne. And it's crazy because cayenne, we taste it immediately and it's quite spicy, but spicy is a little different than heating, right? It's just a tiny bit different. When we think of actual heating, like burning something bad or bacteria or viruses, then we go for rosemary and oregano. And just one drop, because it is so heating, one drop can go a long mile. And particularly during Kapha season, if the days are going a little bit too on the warmer side, try to replace rosemary with oregano. Try to replace oregano with rosemary, because rosemary is just a tiny bit more cool. Oregano, for being so warming and heating, can be actually quite aggravating, particularly towards the end of springtime. So we're shifting to summertime, and we don't want to enhance or aggravate our pitta because it's already going to get started. We want to stay on the cooler side, right? So we begin with heating oils in the spring. We begin to transition softly into heating because we're traveling towards summer. Now, in terms of blends, doTERRA has two of my favorites, which is On Guard, which is our protective blend. I literally don't go anywhere without this. And this one has the combination of cooling and heating herbs, so creating a little bit of a blend here for that particular cold and flu season, sorry. Now the cheer literally does that kind of effect. It is all a blend of citruses, and it can, when taken internally or even just diffuse in the environment, it can be quite uplifting and energizing. And so that's great for feeling a little dull or a little unmotivated or even depressed. Any questions so far? All right, moving forward. So let's talk about Pitta dosha, liquid fire. So the Pitta gunas, or the qualities of this, can be hot, oily, bright, sharp, and intense. Literally summertime, right? When we think about the individual Pitta type, you can just get to know me. Or we can see that these people are medium muscular-willed, they're intense, and they're very strong-willed. They're great leaders and public speakers. They can be intelligent, because I sometimes feel that I'm the stupidest person in the world. And they are quite productive. They prefer challenges and competitions. And honestly, we treat both pleasure and professional environments as competition and as challenges. It's kind of very hard to turn off from that mode. We get shit done, but that can be a very bad and negative weapon, because when we overexploit that kind of energy, when we overexploit our ability to actually burn and digest things, then we can experience inflammation, skin rashes, acne, hives. We can experience a lot of acid reflux that lead up to heartburn. We can experience that loose stool, or even to the point of diarrhea. That was little Frankie's for me. It was terrible. All the nightshades, very bad for Pitta aggravation. We can experience even burning, irritated and itchy eyes. And that is why Ayurveda begins to prescribe that during summertime, or particularly for Pitta, primarily people, we can spray our face and eyes with pure organic rose water. So the eyes are the form of release for Pitta. That's where we actually eliminate most of our heat. And when we absorb most of our heat, we see things. We have a very sharp gaze. If you know me, you've probably seen that by now. And so I literally, the first thing that I do from the morning, part of my self-care morning rituals, is spraying rose water in my eyes, because otherwise my entire year and my entire life is about burning, itchy, irritated eyes. When we think of some of the mental and emotional qualities of Pitta, we find anger and frustration that lingers, because it's not that we can't experience anger and frustration. That's normal. Emotions come and go. But when we experience things that linger, that unmotivatedly are there, then that is a sign of excess Pitta, excess fire, excess irritation. We can experience agitation and impatience very often. We can get too competitive and to the point where we become critical. We can be extremely judgmental, particularly with ourselves, and you can reflect that by just my comment of saying that I'm probably the most stupid person in the world. And then we can say that we're quite intense and impulsive, right? And so when we think of Pitta balancing oils, we have cooling, soothing, calming oils, not necessarily grounding oils, because the thing with a Pitta is that you want to treat them like it is like it's a person that could kill you at any moment. So you don't want to give it too much of its opposite image, because they will become even more aggravated. For a Pitta person, the worst thing that you can do is bring them to a restorative class. Straight up the entire time we'll be complaining internally. Something that we can go for, it's just a happy medium, it's a slow flow, or something that keeps us moving, but just with more awareness and pausing in between. So we meet them halfway, right? And the same thing applies when we start to think about foods, herbs, and plant medicine. We meet them halfway. We want something that is cooling to balance out the fire, but we want something that is somewhat soothing without being too heavy or grounding. And so we have rose, lavender, peppermint, spearmint, eucalyptus, fennel being one of the coolest types of foods that are out there. Coriander, turmeric, basil, ginger, jasmine, and neroli. And all of these, except ginger, and I would say peppermint, can be applied in the skin pretty much daily if you're experiencing Pitta aggravating symptoms. Now, ginger and peppermint, when used too much, too often, can be actually quite drying for the skin. And so we want to possibly go for instead some of the eucalyptus if we want to start to build our own DIY products at home to soothe any irritations in the skin. But mostly my highest recommendation, go for rose and lavender. Now, rose and lavender are some of the cooling and most soothing oils that a Pitta can use for skin care. Now, when it comes to the blends, doTERRA has the adaptive blend, which again meets you halfway just by the combination of herbs that is there. It has a lot of cooling herbs like peppermints and eucalyptus, and as well as coriander. It has a little bit of a grounding herb that it's copaiba that comes from the wax of a tree as well. And then it has citrus oils to actually enhance, because Pittas don't really want to get dull and soft. We don't want to get slow. We want to find a neutral state of balance when we're actively working, but also grounded enough. And so we give ourselves a little bit of both worlds in order to find that state of balance here. Any questions so far? Kelly, do you know what your most predominant dosha is? If you feel open to share, just so that I can talk a little bit more about skincare for you.
Yeah, I think, I took like a Banyan Botanicals like online thing, and primarily I'm Pitta, but a lot of Kapha too.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know
so
if
I would
that's
say,
really true.
I can totally see that in you. Like
Okay.
totally see the Kapha, totally see the Kapha in your personality, in your constitution as well. And you can, of course, the best way to identify a Kapha person is by looking at their hands and feet. There is such a thing as Kapha hands and feet, Pitta hands and feet, Vata hands and feet. When we think about very lean and thin people, a person that is Vata primarily might be overweight. And so you look at them and you're just like, oh, that person's Kapha, but not really. Look at their hands. And if you can see their veins and their bone structure, that means that they're actually Vata. And they perhaps are out of balance and they gain a lot of weight. And so when we think of really identifying what is it that I can easily see what I am, Kapha is a little bit of a chunkier, like if you penetrate or you're giving yourself a deep tissue massage, they have to really get in there in order for you to feel it. And you can actually have a little bit more resistance towards sensation and pain. And so sometimes for a Vata person, they go for a deep tissue massage and they come out, I'm never coming back. That was terrible. Like that was so painful. It's because they're very sensitive to touch. And so they actually feel way more. Their sense of touch is actually more enhanced. And for a Pitta person, it's kind of sort of like in a medium, and they're always quite hot. They can sweat uncontrollably, so they can have very sweaty hands and feet. So does that make sense? And perhaps you can say like, oh, maybe that's me, or all of you, maybe like I've experienced that, or I can identify that that's mostly what I am.
Totally. I'm like, I always say I'm a sweaty person because I'm always sweaty. My hands sweat, like my armpits sweat. I'm just like a sweaty person. So that's my aha moment tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. I was a little girl in ballet class doing just the second plie and already drenched in sweat. It was very uncomfortable. I always thought that there was something wrong with me and that I needed to eat more ice, which is a complete misconception. Ayurveda says that not by drinking cold foods, you're gonna actually cure or balance Pitta, is by going for cooling foods, something that has that characteristic. So like, for example, cucumber, mint, sweet mint, peppermint, right? And so how are we doing so far? Any questions, any reflections? All good? Awesome.
Those are all my favorite smells.
Yeah?
Yeah, all of them. So that's like, I find pleasure
Awesome.
with all of them. So that's so interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of miraculous because, like, honestly, when we move beyond our critical monkey mind, our intuition and our deeper intellect knows exactly what we need to balance our constitution. We are part of nature, so that means that there's a deeper intelligence in each and every one of us, but we've gotten too conditioned to seeking what I think is best for me based on the information out there. I've forgotten to connect with my intuition and with my inner intelligence to see, hey, what am I naturally attracted to? And these are all my favorite smells too. Like growing up, I would be fascinated by peppermint, spearmint, and eucalyptus. And I never knew why. Like, it was just like, oh my God, I love the way that this smells. And even the color of these herbs and plants. Like, I was always very attracted to them. Little did I know that that's literally my intuition. And there's no better time for us to understand what is it that our inner intelligence is actually saying than when we're children. And so that's our parents' responsibility to notice and hold on to that to tell us, right? Like, God, your only job is to take care of me. That's not the only job, but like the main job, right? And so it's actually incredible when we start to really connect to ourselves and we do our inward practices, right? That we actually get to awaken to our own intuition and we see like, wow, I'm actually really inclined to certain things beyond my conditioning, beyond what I really like and dislike because I learned to like it and learned to dislike it. I'm actually naturally inclined to choose certain things that will bring me back into balance. I'm really grateful that you're getting that inner kind of sort of reflection. It's pretty awesome. Like the ecosystem of the body is dope. And so moving forward, just to summarize all this information so that if anything, you can even take a screenshot of this and walk away with this in the next slide, is that the doshas in each season will increase the same dosha in ourselves. And so fall, winter season will aggravate Vata. And whether I'm primarily Vata or not, I will experience the qualities of Vata. And for Vata types, fall and winter are this. If I'm going to only choose a period of time in the entire year to take care of myself, really go for your time. So if you're Vata type, really take care of yourself during Vata time. If you are Pitta time, really take care of yourself during Pitta time, knowing that you will have similar symptoms and Pitta can go aggravated. Whether or not you are, you will experience the qualities of Pitta and you can begin to invite what balances you in that way. And then with Kapha, the same thing applies. No problem, Matt, thanks. To balance Vata, favor Kapha herbs, warming and heavy oils. To balance Kapha, favor Pitta herbs, heating and pungent oils. To balance Pitta, favor Vata herbs, dry and cooling oils. And so these rules, I really want you to take away with them. Screenshot them if you like also. Is allow nature to dictate what's for dinner. There's nothing more beautiful than to see what seasonally is being given in your farmer's market if you do have one accessible, and actually eat what is being harvested in that time of year. Because if there's something that Ayurveda really kind of sort of uses to give us what we need in terms of food is what is actually being given and what is actually growing and being harvested during a period of time. So allow nature to dictate what's for dinner. Needs versus wants, and this is where we should give ourselves 70% of what we need. But what happens? We're human, right? There's always that little juggle room to give ourselves but what we want. Because going back to that initial mantra that I shared with you guys, when the soul, the senses, and the mind are blissful, that is actual health. That is attained health. If I give myself only what nourishes my spirit, maybe my physical and mental body will be depleted. If I give myself only a nice workout and healthy eating, and I neglect my soul and what nourishes my actual spirit and essence, then I will find myself constantly experiencing this desire to seek more and fill a void that is already empty there. And it will continue to be empty. And so we want to give ourselves 70% of what we need, because that in itself will allow the physical body, the physiology of our body, and our psychology abilities to actually be balanced. But overall, there's always a little room for what we want and desire so that we can satisfy the senses and also that impulsive aspect of our mind. And so maybe do have that bowl of ice cream. And Ayurveda says that if you're going to have something cold, have it at lunchtime, because lunchtime is where the sun is at its highest. Therefore, my digestive fire is at its highest, and it will process that food that is cold or possibly raw a lot better. And so if we're going to have it, which is totally fine to have it from time to time, know when to have it so that you can be satisfied, but also healthy and balanced. We change with the seasons, and our self-care and habits will have to change with seasons. And so every season, you'll know that you'll have to go for different plant medicine and foods. Consistency is key, especially for Vata types. We don't like routine. They don't like that ability to stay on track. They get distracted easily. So consistency and actually finding a regimen that is realistic and that you can really commit to is key. And it's actually the path of success. And lastly, and if not the most important, self-love. Love yourself like the person that you love the most. And that really encaptures everything that is up here. If you love yourself, you're going to give yourself what you need. If you love yourself, which is just a microcosm of the macrocosm, you're going to make choices that actually sustain you and the environment, and therefore this Mother Earth, this planet that we live in. And so lastly, if you're interested at all in diving further into this plant medicine, particularly the doTERRA brand, you can follow the steps and you can screenshot them. And when you select the Wellness Advocate, you can select me, you can type in my name, and that way I can get a notification so that I can schedule you a follow-up. And then also an ability to actually really discover what is your Prakriti by guiding you through your own pulse reading, getting a tongue and eye diagnosis, so that I can be sure what is your constitution. And from there, from that short 20-minute consultation, I can guide you how to best use the oils in your kit, whichever you use. And then also let you know which are the ones that you should be applying and going for based on the seasons, externally environment-wise, and also based on the seasons internally in my own ecosystem, right? And last thing for you to go is that really start to think about your emotions, your thoughts, and any symptoms in the body as seasons that come and go. Because nothing really is staying forever. Everything is temporary, right? And so when we think of that, then balance is something that is actually attainable. If I think that, oh, I'm always heavy, I always have poor digestion, right? That is me attaching to that personality or that learned disease or even symptom. And then I'm not allowing myself to have that space to seek for what would actually bring me into balance. And therefore, I'll start to actually stay away from the process of finding balance. And it is a difficult one. And so don't beat yourself too hard, because balance is something that we need to strive for, work on every day. And also it's something that we need someone to guide us through and possibly hold us accountable for. And so thank you so much. I know that it went 3 minutes over, but if you have the time and have any questions, I'm here to answer, and I'm here to serve you beyond this short hour. So please reach out either now or anytime.
Thank you so much, Ira.
Thank you.
I always
I hope
learn
that was
something
helpful.
new. Thank you. So
Thank you, Mama.
helpful. Thank you.
I'll see you soon. I was talking to Madison, and oh my God,
Oh,
baby's here.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
He's so
I'm so
cute.
happy to see the picture. He's so adorable.
I
I'm really
know.
happy for
He's
her.
so special. I know. Well, hopefully we'll see you soon. Who knows?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like, hopefully, and I pray that circumstances change and that I can actually officially meet him. But yeah, from now on, love and blessings from afar.
I know. Virtual hugs.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, gals. Thank you. See you soon, everybody.
See you.
Bye-bye.